you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today is going to be the update for the Off Balance Templar, the Magicka build for the Wrathstone DLC. Now the purpose of this build is to obviously do as much damage as possible, but both single target and area of effect, not just one or the other. Also it debuffs targets and buffs your groups for their damage output, and of course this has survivability and sustain combined, so it's an all-rounder. Anyway, we're going to go into the basic stuff first of all. Let's put our stats on. Let's put on a resist buff as well, because we'll go to this in a little while. We don't use this all the time, but we'll just put it on so you can see what the potential is. So we're sitting on 41.1k max Magicka, 19.6k max health, which is massive. We are on 10k max stam, 863 recovery, and we are on 2.8k spell damage. That actually goes up to about 3.5, almost 4k, 49.7% crit chance, and our resistance of 22k. Let me put that on again, fell off. 22k and 17.5k, which is massive, but that is only if we're standing in our rune. We will get to that later. That's not necessarily essential all the time. 64 points into max magic. We don't need them put into anything else. We're using the Shadow Mundus Stone, surprise, surprise, and we are using stage 4 Vampire. I'm a stage 4 Vampire all the time on all of my DPS builds. Just make sure you don't stand in fire. It's not a case of it is necessarily one of those things where you have to just not be Vampire, otherwise you're dead. Fire will kill you anyway. So just be aware of mechanics and you won't struggle as a Vampire. Plus when I get to the passives, that'll make a lot more sense. Now, I'm going to explain all the skills in a lot of detail. I'm going to explain where they come from, what morphs they start off as, and what they end up as. And if you are already familiar with this, you're welcome to skip it. However, if you do skip it, it's at your own risk. And if you ask questions that are already answered in the comment section below, I am going to ignore them. So, again, it's at your own risk. Anyway, first of all is Purifying Light. This is from the Dawn's Wrath skill line. It's a third ability unlock. It starts off as Backlash, morph it to Purifying Light. Now, what this does is it puts a beam of light on your target, does damage initially, and then after 6 seconds, it will pop, as you can see here. Now, what it also does is if it fires and you do damage to the target, all the damage that you do is saved up. 20% of it is released in a burst, and it does more damage. So the more damage you do while that's active, the more it saves up, and then it will burst at the end. So don't just put this on the target and leave it there. You have to do damage to make it effective. However, it will copy up to 24.6k damage. It won't do any more than that. So the more damage you do, the better, but it is capped. So once it gets to 24.6k, or however high it goes with all your buffs and bonuses, it won't go any higher than that. So keep this on your target as much as possible. You should be able to keep it up at least once every rotation. And not only that, when it expires, you'll see this here. Ignore that light and stuff, we'll get to that. When it pops, you'll notice a circle around the feet of the enemy. There, you see this little circle here? Glowing, that is a heal. So not only do you do damage, not only do you save damage and apply more damage, but you also heal you and your group if you're inside that circle for 2.9k health every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. So this is not only damage, it's also survivability as well. It's very, very strong, so you want to keep it on the target at all times. Next up is Beast Trap, in fact Rearming Trap. This is from the Fighters Guild skill line. This is the 5th ability to unlock. It does take some time to get here, so you're going to have to grind up Fighters Guild to get it. Once you have got it, morph it to Rearming Trap. Now this is very simple. Puts the trap on the ground. Anyone caught inside of that will take physical damage. Now, of course, we're doing magic damage mostly, so that doesn't really do a lot. But what it does do, which does benefit us, is it gives us minor force while it's active for 6 seconds. Now, minor force will give us a 10% increase to all of our critical damage. So any crits we do are increased. Now, this is very, very important because, of course, the Templars excel at crit damage, and you will see that in the passes when we get there. But this has a bit of an extra bonus. With the Rearming Trap morph, this actually reapplies once it has popped. So not only will this immobilize and capture the enemy and do damage, even if it's a boss, it will still do damage and give you the buff, but once it's finished, it will reapply. So you actually get 12 seconds, not 6. Keep that in your rotation the whole time. You should have 100% uptime on it. Radiant Glory. Now this is chosen to be this morph on purpose. So, Dawn's Wrath, 5th ability to unlock. This is your main execute, aka Jesus Beam. Starts off as Radiant Destruction. You want to morph it to Radiant Glory. Now what this does is this does damage every tick and it will tick 4 times over 1.8 seconds, and it will deal progressively more damage, up to 480% more damage, to enemies below 50% and under. So 50% is where it starts getting stronger, and then the lower and lower and lower it gets, the more aggressive this ability gets. It gets stronger. So you don't want to use this at 50%. You want to use it kind of around the 40% mark on bosses and ads, and just be careful not to overuse it too early, because it will be a negative effect. It'll actually do less damage than your main spammable. So make sure you use this as your main execute, but above all, keep your dots up while doing so, because just one Jesus Beam on its own is not going to be enough to overall DPS. Now, when you do damage, this also heals you for 20% of the damage inflicted. So if you do a flat amount of damage or you crit damage, whatever you do will translate to a heal to you. The other morph of this, Radiant Oppression, actually does 20% more damage based on how much Magicka you currently have left in your bar. Now that is very important to note. If you have low Magicka at the moment, which you normally do at execute, and you fire off that particular morph, you will do a flat amount, and that bonus won't really be that positive for you. Let's call it that. However, if you have a full bar, which you shouldn't have if you're doing rotations properly, that's when it'll excel. So for that particular morph, it's situational, whereas this one, it literally heals you just for doing damage. So I actually preference this one overall. As far as DPS is concerned, between the two, I've done multiple tests with both different versions, and it's minimal. It depends on how much you've actually got left. So I would always favor this one, especially since execute phases are normally when the most damage comes in. And of course, just for doing your execute, you will stay alive. So this is essential. I really, really recommend you use this particular morph of it. Anyway, 40% and under is kind of your sweet spot for that. 30% if you can risk it, but don't use it at 50% because that's kind of just where it starts. It's not really worth it. Now, Puncture and Sweeps is your main spammable. This is from the Adric Spear skill line. This is the first ability you unlock. This is your bread and butter for this particular build and class, if you like. But this basically spams spears in front of you for 1.1 seconds. I'll just demonstrate what that does. Very simple. Oh, Jesus Beam, by the way, looks like this, just in case you were wondering. There's the beam. Very powerful. But Puncture and Sweeps does this. Any enemies caught inside of that will take damage. Quite a lot of damage, in fact. However, the closest enemy to you, the one in front, will take the most damage, while the rest of them will take less, but the same amount equally. So make sure, obviously, the main target you want to hit is the one that's right in front of you, and the rest will take damage as well. Now, the final hit will initiate a snare, but that's not that important for PvE, so although it's a bonus, we don't really pay much attention to that. However, you do heal for 40% of the damage done. So, if you hit one enemy, 40% of the damage you do to it will heal you. If you hit multiple enemies, 40% of all the damage you do will heal you. You can stay alive while spamming this ability, and you should use this as your main spammable. This is in our rotation. We use it twice every rotation unless we're doing a heavy attack. You will see that kind of come together once I get to that, but this is very important. Now, you do want to morph this from Puncturing Strikes to Puncturing Sweeps. The other morph is Biting Jabs, and that's for stamina, not Magicka, so it's essential that you get this particular morph. Now, in a light, this is on our bar just for stats. Basically, this comes from the Mage's Guild skill line. You don't have to have Mage's Guild 10. You only have to have 2 for this. But for being on your bar, it starts off as Mage Light, by the way. Morph it to Inner Light. For being on your bar, it gives you 5% increase to maximum magic, which is awesome because we want loads and loads of Magicka, so we do more damage. And also, it grants you Major Prophecy, increasing your spell critical rating by 2191. Now, that is a buff type. They do not stack, so if you have potions that have that as well, it won't stack with it. But it is a 10% increase to crit chance just for being on your bar, so that's a really nice bonus. What's next? Ice Comet. This is also in the Mage's Guild skill line. You do not have to have this. This is here purely for stats, which I will explain once we get into the passives. But this also comes from Mage's Guild. This is on the bar just for stats. This does require Mage's Guild 10, but if you don't have it, don't panic. What you can do instead is you can have yourself a little bit of a utility slot, and you can put yourself Solar Prism, which starts off as Nova. You can have Solar Prism and put that on your bar instead. That will be absolutely fine. You can use it for oh shit moments. I don't know if I've got enough ultimate. I don't think I have. No, I don't. Let's see. Wrong button. Oh, I have. There we go. There's your Nova. So, this will actually apply Major Maim to the target, reducing the damage that they do. So, make sure this is on the enemy, not on your group. Doesn't matter if your group are inside of this or not. The targets that actually are affected by it will have their damage reduced. Also, it has a really big synergy inside, so your DPS can kind of pick that up and do loads and loads of damage. That isn't your main ultimate. That isn't what you'd normally be using, but in oh shit situations, you can obviously put this on if you'd like, and especially if you don't have Ice Comet. Now, the back bar. Oh, Ice Comet, by the way, very, very important. This is only used if you are almost killing the boss and you haven't got enough of your back bar ultimate. If it's nearly dead, you've got nothing else you can use, it's a, oh shit, we need to kill it quickly moment, use this. The rest of the time, do not, because if you fail to crit this, you're going to regret it, because it's just one big shot and then a nice dot underneath. The one big shot will be wasted. Use your back bar ultimate. I'll get to that in a moment. We need this on here, Harness Magicka. This is your main shield. This is from the light armor skill line. You must have 5 pieces of light armor worn in order to take advantage of this ability. Starts off as annulment, morph it to Harness Magicka. Now, this will give you a damage shield, equivalent of 40% of your maximum health. So the larger the health bar, the bigger the shield. Now, this will also absorb magic abilities. So as long as the shield lasts, you can take up to 3 hits with this, and each hit will give you Magicka back. 1k Magicka, in fact, per hit, as long as the shield lasts. This is obviously improved by the amount of light armor pieces you wear, but for us, for this particular build, we are using 5. So whenever you're in trouble, quickly switch to your back bar, pop on a shield, and then carry on healing from underneath it with your damage. Very, very important. A little tricky to start with if you are not used to damage shields, but once you get used to it, just remember your damage heals you, and if you are in trouble, you can quickly switch, shield, and then carry on healing and doing your stuff. Don't just stand there holding block all day, spamming shields, because you'll just run out of juice. So, next up is Wall of Elements, or Elemental Blockade, otherwise known as Blockade of Storms, because we are using a lightning staff. The name changes depending on what staff type you are using. Now, in Destruction Staff skill line, this is the second ability you unlock. Morph it from Wall of Elements to Elemental Blockade. Now, this is very important to the build. This will do lightning damage on the ground in this area of effect. Anything caught in here will take lightning damage. However, why is this so important? Anything caught in here takes lightning damage, and lightning damage has a chance to apply concussion. Concussion is a status effect chance from lightning and can cause the enemy to receive the concussed status effect and minor vulnerability. Now, if minor vulnerability is on the target, every single person hitting that target will increase their damage by 8%, you included. However, minor vulnerability, if procced via concussion, so concussion is still present, if the Wall of Elements itself hits it, which it will do because it's still ticking, you can apply Off Balance. Off Balance can happen for 5 seconds once every 20 with a 15-second cooldown, so it can have a 25% uptime. Off Balance is essential. It's a very, very basic mechanic to the game, but if you can utilize it, it is huge. Every time something is off balance, there are ways to utilize it for more damage overall in your champion points, but that is when you want to take advantage of your heavy attack window. If you heavy attack during off balance, your heavy attack will be 70% more effective in terms of its damage output, and you will also gain back double resources for whatever type that is. So if you're using a stamina-based weapon in your heavy attack, or using a Magicka-based weapon and you're doing a heavy attack, whichever one of the resources it applies to, you will get double back. So it's very, very important indeed. This resist buff we will come to later. That's not necessarily there. Just fire that by accident. Now, the way to apply Off Balance is you want concussion and you want Wall of Elements at the same time. There we go. There's 2 debuffs there. One is the dark blue one, and the other one's like an axe going into the guy's shoulder. The axe going into the guy's shoulder is concussion and minor vulnerability. That's what you want. Now, the blue one is Off Balance, which is a secondary effect from that as long as Wall of Elements is down. And the one you're looking at right now with the dude standing there posing, that is the invulnerability to Off Balance. There's a 15-second timer for that. So we'll see if we can do it again. There we go. Instant Off Balance. Then, as soon as it's run out, he's immune for 15 seconds. Hopefully that makes a bit of sense, but you have to keep up that Wall of Elements all the time, and this whole build is centered around pushing as much off balance as possible for you and your group. Skills. Go back to these. Right, where were we? Solar Barrage. This is in Dawn's Wrath skill line. This is the second ability to unlock. Starts off as Solar Flare. Now, Solar Barrage got buffed in the recent patch, in that before it used to have an empower to your light attacks once every 2 seconds while it was active. However, this no longer does that. Now it's 100% uptime on empower, so all of your light attacks are boosted by 40% as long as this is running. Now, it does say that it lasts for 6 seconds, but it actually lasts for 8 because there is a bonus in our passives towards this. What this does is very, very simple, is it does damage in area of effect every 2 seconds, and every single light attack you do is empowered. So basically what you need to do is keep this active and make sure your light attacks are coming in. All of your light attacks are increased by 40%, so you must get those light attacks in. It is essential. It's an area of effect damage over time ability. It does a shit ton of damage, but it also buffs the crap out of your rotation. Now, Inner Light goes here for, again, the 5% bonus to max Magicka, just like the front bar. But if you are in situations where you find you're a little bit squishy or your Magicka recovery is not quite up to par, you can swap this for Channeled Focus. Now, this is in the Restoring Light skill line. It's the 5th ability you unlock. Starts off as Rune Focus, which just gives you resistances, and then the Channeled Focus version of it gives you 240 Magicka back every 1 second for 20 seconds. It is incredible. However, this also gives you a Major Ward and Major Resolve, which is 5280 resistances across the board. That is a buff type, so it doesn't stack with any others, especially if you've got a Warden in the group. However, this is the only bonus in the game, the only skill in the game, in fact, that will boost your own Major Ward and Major Resolve. For standing inside your rune, it will be increased by 50%. So, for example, our resistances right now are 14 and 9. So if we activate this, it stays with us. We're now up to 19 and 14, almost 15. But if we stand in it, it's even higher, 22 and 17.5. So if you are finding that you are a little bit squishy, you can opt to do that and just use that on that bar instead of the Inner Light. Just be aware, of course, your rotation will be slightly off by a second or so, so your damage overall will drop a little bit. But it's entirely up to you. For safety's sake, it's better to be alive and have 1 or 2k less DPS than be dead and have no DPS. It's entirely up to you, however. Depends on how experienced you are with the setup. Now, the last ability before the ultimate is Blazing Spear. This is an Adric's Spear skill line. This is the 4th ability you unlock. Starts off as Spear Shards. Morph it to Blazing Spear. And this will do magic damage every 1 second for 8 seconds while it's on the ground. And this has a synergy effect on it, which will be able to be picked up by a member of your group in order to restore 3960 Magicka or Stamina, whichever one of the two pools is highest for them. So tanks, DPS, whatever, anyone that's close to you that can pick up this will get the resources back. It's essential. So with us being in melee range and doing melee damage and all the rest of it and throwing out spears inside our rotation, the other melee guys next to us can pick up the spear with ease. No problem whatsoever. Keep that in your rotation all the time. I will show you the rotation. It will never fail. You'll have it up 100% of the time, so don't panic, but make sure you do actually press it. Don't skip it. Finally, Thunderous Rage. This is absolutely insane. This is in Destruction Staff skill line. It's the ultimate that you get at level 50. Starts off as Elemental Storm, morph it to Elemental Rage, and for being on our bar with a lightning staff, it's called Thunderous Rage instead. Now, this will do a massive area of effect damage over time ultimate. Everything caught inside of it will take huge shock damage every 1 second, and because it's lightning, this lasts 2 seconds longer. So this ability actually lasts 9 seconds. Now, this is your main ultimate. You must be using this at all times, unless the boss is almost dead and you don't have enough to afford it. If you can't afford it, then of course use Ice Comet just to finish it off. But if you can afford it, use this all the time. Not only does this do a stupid amount of damage, but this also, because it's lightning, can synergize alongside your Wall of Elements and your concussion effects and your lightning stuff and all that good stuff to apply extra minor vulnerability, concussion, and off balance. So it's very, very important that you use that. It's absolutely insane. We are built for AoE with very high single target, but that contributes to it to no end. It's absolutely insane. So make sure that is your main ultimate. Now, passives, important stuff. Adric's Spear, pay very close attention to these. Increases your critical damage by 10%. We are a Templar. Our base bonus is that if we crit, we do extra damage. So you want this passive as soon as possible, but you must have an Adric's Spear ability slotted. Puncturing Sweeps is an Adric's Spear ability, and we want it on the back bar as well. So we have Blazing Spear on the back bar. That is why they're not both on the same bar. One on the front, one on the back. You get the passive on both bars. Also increases your damage done to blocking targets. Sometimes you'll be up against enemies that block. You go through their resistance or their block mitigation by 10%. Spear Wall, this is essential. Gain minor protection for 3 seconds, reducing damage taken by 8%. We are tanky as hell. Just for using an Adric's Spear ability, we have 3 seconds worth of 8% mitigation. So this stab, which is in our spammable, look at my buffs at the bottom there. You see that yellow background with the armor or shoulder of the armor in there? that is minor protection. So if, for argument's sake, our rotation is 2 of these, which it is, and then we go to the back bar and use our other Adric Spear ability, you can see that we pretty much have almost 100% uptime on a minor resistance bonus or minor mitigation bonus just for doing our rotation. We don't even have to apply any bonuses or buffs or anything. We just have to keep doing our rotation. We will heal off of these. We will do more damage off of these because of the crit bonus. And we will survive longer because we have this minor protection. It is very, very strong. When you deal damage with an Adric Spear ability, you have a 25% chance to deal an additional 1,700 physical damage or 5,029 magical damage, whichever is higher. This effect can happen once every 0.5 seconds. So this can happen twice during the puncture and sweeps, or it could happen effectively almost 16 times during this, once every 0.5 seconds. However, because this is every second, it will only fire up to 8 times on this bar. But you can have this running and this running at the same time, and each ability can fire its own passive for that. So again, for firing this, you heal, you keep up minor protection, you get free damage. This one, you keep up minor protection, you get free damage. Keep those 2 abilities up at all times and you will be borderline God mode. It is absolutely insane. You hit hard, you survive, and you heal. Very important to note and understand these passives. Increases your weapon damage by 6%, which is not that important because we don't do physical damage, but it does increase your spell resistance by 2640, so that does help us get all of these passives ASAP. Dawn's Wrath, of course, increases the duration of your Sunfire, Eclipse, Solar Flare, and Nova abilities by 2 seconds. We are using Solar Flare, which is Solar Barrage Morph, so that does increase duration by 2 seconds. Also, if you need to, in oh shit situations, you can, of course, apply Nova, which does give you another 2 seconds on this as well. Instead of 8 seconds, you get 10. So we are going to need that passive. It's quite handy. Prism, casting a Dawn's Wrath ability, generates 3 ultimate. This effect can occur once every 6 seconds. Now, in our rotation, we are going to use this. And look, it lasts 6 seconds. We are going to try and keep that up for 100% uptime of its actual cast. We're not going to overwrite it, and then we'll cast it again. And every time that we do cast an ability from that skill line, we will get 3 ultimate back. Now, of course, if this is on our front bar rotation, and I'm doing abilities, and then I'm swapping bar, obviously I can't fire it anymore. So I'm not going to get ultimate. But Solar Barrage is on our back bar, which is also a Dawn's Wrath ability. So when I fire this, we get the ultimate again. This on the front bar, this on the back bar. Every 12 seconds, we are going to get 3 ultimate twice. Just built on the rotation. Essential stuff. Make sure you obviously stick to your rotation and your ultimate regen will be nice and high. Now, casting a Dawn's Wrath ability grants you minus sorcery to you and your group for 20 seconds, increasing your spell damage by 10%. That is also important. If you know earlier, I showed you I had 2.8k spell damage, which we've got there, 2.847. However, if I cast a Dawn's Wrath ability, I'm at 3.1, but it's going up higher because I've got a certain set on, but we'll get into that in a minute. But it starts at 3.2 or 3.1 just by applying that ability, and it applies to your group. So you give it to other members of your group as well. It's a massive, massive bonus. It's really, really handy. You've got to make sure you keep up your Dawn's Wrath abilities. These passives are essential. If you understand them properly, they are very, very effective. But it's a 10% increase as well. So that's huge. Now, reduces the Magicka stamina and ultimate cost of all your abilities by 4%. What else do you want? All abilities are cheaper, including your ultimate, so you build ulti really, really fast, and they cost less than other classes, excluding the Sorcerer, which has got a massive reduction. Restoring Light, we're not using a lot of these abilities. In fact, we're only using one occasionally, so these are not extremely essential. This one increases the healing effects of your Restoring Light abilities. We're not using any at all, in fact. This one here, while standing in your Rune Focus, Cleansing Ritual, or Rite of Passage, and up to 4 seconds after leaving, you gain minor mending, increasing your healing down by 8%. Now, that is important, because if you're standing in this, and you're doing your rotations, any heals you do from your rotations are 8% more effective. So you have 8% reduction to damage. From one passive, you have 8% increase to heals from another. So this one is actually quite important. So do get Sacred Ground. This one is not going to be relevant, because we're not actually using this at all. And this one also is actually very, very important. Increases your resurrection speed by 20%, and resurrected allies return with 100% more health, and you may fill a soul gem on doing so. You are really fast at resurrecting people. Inside content or dungeons, trials, whatever you want to call it, if you see someone die, you are the fastest one at picking them up. I know, of course, you're going to suffer on DPS, but you're going to suffer a lot more if they stay on the ground. So get them up quick, get them back in the action, and then carry on with what you're doing. You are the fastest reser on the field. Now, I know a lot of people assume that if they're a healer Templar that they should always be resin. That's technically false. This is a bonus in case shit hits the fan. You shouldn't be the one to res all the time if you're the healer. In fact, you shouldn't be resin because you should be healing the people that are doing that for you. Otherwise, if you're not healing, everybody dies. But in oh shit situations, if you are one of those healers that are quite good with mechanics and everybody's about to die, you can take advantage of this passive. But for us as a DPS, this is great. Really, really powerful. Destro Staff skills. Of course, you want to get every single one of these. This one here, Try Focus, you must have a Destro Staff equipped, obviously. But your Shock Staff heavy attack damage actually does splash damage to nearby targets, and we will be utilizing this. If you do a heavy attack, the damage you put out will hit other targets surrounding it, doing massive area of effect damage, and we are built for both single target and area of effect. Penetrating Magic, this one increases your destruction staff ability skills basically by ignoring a certain amount of resistances, so this is quite nice, including your light and heavy attacks. Increases your chance to apply burning, concussion, and chilled status effects by 100%. That is not a 100% chance to do it. That's a 100% chance on top of the base. So we want concussion as much as possible, and this pushes the ability to apply concussion if we have a destruction staff equipped. So if you're a tank or a healer and you do this with your back bar, with your lightning staff, and then you swap to your front bar and you've got a sword and board or resto, you no longer have that passive. Just note it. Also, Ancient Knowledge, have we done this one? Nope. Equipped on a lightning staff increases your damage done with area of effect abilities. So, how important is this? Our splash damage from our heavy attacks is area of effect. This, our main spammable, is area of effect. This here is area of effect. This is area of effect. And so is this. And so is our Destruction Staff Ultimate. I think you can see where we're going with this. Our main source of our overall damage, apart from our light attacks and our Jesus Beam, is actually area of effect. So it's essential to take advantage of a lightning staff. Not to mention it's probably the easiest heavy attack staff to use. It's much easier than the flame staff. So your sustain is covered. Now, finally, when you kill an enemy with a Destro Staff ability, you restore 3600 Magicka just for doing so. So light attack, heavy attack, wall of elements, whatever you kill it with, as long as it's a Destro Staff ability or hit, you will gain back Magicka. So that helps your sustain as well. Now, we are using 5 pieces of light armor, so you want to get all of these passives. This one reduces the effectiveness of snares and reduces the cost of sprinting based on the amount of worn pieces of light armor. This one increases your Magicka recovery and reduces the cost of your abilities. This one will give you increased spell resistance for each piece worn as well. This one requires 5 pieces no matter what and increases your spell crit rating by 2191, which is actually 10%. And although it is the same bonus, the 10% as Major Prophecy, which is on our inner light, this does actually stack because it's not a buff type, it's a flat bonus. So we've got an extra amount there. And also increases your spell penetration by 4884. So PVE targets have 18,200 resistance, and the higher your penetration, the more of that resistance you chip into, and if you can get them down to 0, obviously you'll do your max potential damage for your overall setup at the time, excluding buffs and bonuses. So you want to make sure that you can get as close to 18,200 as possible with your own abilities, bonuses, buffs, etc., and alongside your group. If you go a little bit over, do not panic. Buffs and debuffs will not have 100% uptime ever. So you fill that gap if you go slightly over. Plus we do a lot of area of effect damage, and area of effect targets are never debuffed to the same amount as the main target. So if you are over, you will actually do a little bit more damage in area of effect versus everybody else who's been really anal and gone straight up 18,200. So a little bit more is not a negative thing, especially if you're solo or in dungeon groups as well. But trials especially, if you go slightly over, don't panic. It will actually benefit you in certain situations. Medium armor, we only need 2 passives here. Take this one for the extra stam recovery and reduction to cost of stam abilities, because we are using Beast Trap, which is a stamina cost. And also this increases your movement speed and reduces the cost of dodge roll, which we will be doing. So this helps, even though it's only 1 piece bonus, because we've got 1 medium, this will help. Heavy, we are wearing 1 piece of heavy. This will increase your physical and spell resistances by a tiny amount for 1 piece worn, or for each piece worn rather. This will give you a small amount of resources back for each piece worn, which will count. It's tiny, but it does add up. And this will increase your max health by 2%, which of course you don't want to be squishy. So the more health you can get out of basic passives that you're using, it makes sense. So get this. Now, we are of stage 4 vampire. We want stage 2 or above to get this, which is a 10% increase to magicka and stam recovery, which is huge, and also undeaf. Now remember, if we do damage, we heal. If we keep our damage rotations up with our Aegis Spear skills, we actually have protection bonuses. If we keep our resistance buff up, we've got loads of resistances. And if you do go below 50% health, you will take less damage. Vampire is huge, especially on Templar. It's really, really nice. So the only thing you have to watch out for is fire. Yes, it does more damage, but 9 times out of 10, fire will one-shot you anyway. So watch your feet. I use stage 4 vampire on everything, and I don't struggle inside mechanics. You just have to learn a little bit occasionally to get used to it. But when people scream at you, I died because I'm vampire, 9 times out of 10, that's bullshit. They died because they stood in stupid. Now, Fighters Guild, you will need a couple passives here. First of all, we are using Rearm and Trap, and it is expensive. So, you want Intimidate and Presence to reduce the cost by 15%. You also want Banish the Wicked to generate 9 ultimate every time you kill an undead, Daedra, or werewolf, which means, of course, your ulti gen is faster, and you can pump out more ultimates. So you want this. This one isn't really that important, but you are using a Fighters Guild ability, so if you do want to increase the damage of the one skill that we are using, even though it's very, very low, you can, of course, get this bonus. And if you really want to, you can increase your weapon damage, although it's not necessarily beneficial to us overall. It will slightly improve the overall flat damage of Beast Trap. It's only 3k over 6 seconds. It's not much, but if you've got the spare skill points, then you may as well. Now, Mage's Guild, you do not need every single one of these passives because we actively don't use this ability unless something's nearly dead. So you can if you've got the skill points, but above all, what you do need is this here, Magicka Controller. This will give you 2% increase to your maximum magic, meaning more damage, and your recovery, so your sustain is up, per ability on your bar. So this is 1. Although it's got a 5% bonus already, it does have a further 2% bonus for being there. Same as on the back bar as well. And Ice Comet, this is here, like I said, only for passives. This will give you a 2% bonus to max magic and recovery as well. So it's just here for stats. But like I said earlier, if you don't have Mage's Guild 10, put on Solar Prism, you'll be just fine. Sigil we're not using. Undaunted. Get these as soon as possible. This one, if you take a synergy, and you will, you'll have loads of synergies. You're in melee position. You'll take loads. This will give you 4% of every single resource back every time you take a synergy. Every single synergy in the game has a 20-second cooldown once you've taken it. In a melee position, if you're in an optimized situation, and I don't mean one way or no way crap, I mean you have an abundance of synergies. Everyone's pulling their own weight. You can go anywhere between 4 to 9 synergies in a melee position. So every one you can see, take it, because you will keep your sustain up, which means you can do a lot more as far as your damage is concerned, because you don't have to sit there worrying about sustain. You can literally just pump out your rotations over and over and over. Take those synergies. Every single synergy in the game will either heal you, protect you, or do damage, or something to that effect. Take them all. Now, increases your max health, stamina, and magicka by 2% per type of armor worn. So one heavy piece we have gives us a 2% bonus. The one medium piece we have gives us a 2% bonus. And the 5 light pieces we have, because it's another type of armor, will give us a 2% as well. So we've got 6% across the board. One more thing to note, by the way, you'll get tanks screaming at you for taking their synergies. First of all, that's bulls. It's not their synergy. It's for anyone. And secondly, in your rotation, you have a spear anyway every, 12 seconds. So they're never going to be out of juice. You are actually supplying their bonus. Take all your synergies. Now, we don't need anything from here. High elf, yes, we are a high elf. I've tried this with many different races, and all of them kind of do well, but the high elf topped out on this particular build. This gives you a very handy bonus for this particular, let's say, race or build. You get 640 magicka or stamina back based on whichever is lowest. This can happen once every 6 seconds. So, what this does is we're using Beast Trap, which costs stamina. Now, if you're blocking and dodge rolling and all that kind of stuff, it's very difficult to keep that up in a rotation sometimes. But all we have to do is use a class ability, and we will get back 640 stamina once every 6 seconds. So our sustain for this ability, and the ability to block and dodge and all the rest of it inside mechanics, is now quite well balanced. So this is a very nice passive. Also, when you are using an ability with a channel or cast time, you take 5% less damage. This has a cast time. It already gives us minor protection, but now it gives us a further 5% mitigation to overall damage. Yes, that is multiplicative and has diminished returns depending on how many resistances we have, but since we're quite squishy anyway, as far as our flat resists are concerned, we still get a reasonably decent bonus out of that. So with light armor and a resistance buff, you'll probably get about 4.3-ish% out of it based on what we have to hand. So it's really, really nice. You will actually take less damage for using channeled or cast time abilities, including your Jesus Beam and your stabs. So this passive overall helps us with survivability, helps us inside mechanics, sustain our stamina bar, and helps us reuse our beast trap as and when we need to. So this is very, very positive. This increases your max magic by 2k, and this increases your spell damage by 258. Now, why is this relevant to the Templar versus other previous patches? Previously, we used to get a bonus to max lightning, fire, and frost damage. No magic damage bonuses. These are magic damage. Now, a lot of people think that Magicka is the type, and that's what it applies to. It doesn't. Magic damage is a type of damage, just like fire, frost, and lightning. Now that we have a flat spell damage bonus, we actually benefit from these Magicka abilities, giving us extra damage, more in fact than what we had before. So it's really, really nice. Now, one of the most important passives in the game, in my opinion, you've heard it a million times before if you watch my videos, is medicinal use. You do not have to have maxed alchemy or anything like that, but if in terms of all your skills spent, you don't have to actively make potions all the time, but you will want to max this out as soon as possible. There's an alchemy guide in the description, so you can go and level this up really, really fast. About 15 minutes flat, you'll have it done. But if you don't have enough skill points to hold these in here all the time, dump them out of here once you've got 50 and just keep 3 points in here. Medicinal use will increase your duration of your potion by 30%. Now, we are using potions that we craft, which are here. This will give you major sorcery, which we don't have. We have minor sorcery, and they do stack. We have major prophecy, which we do have on a front bar, but if you use a resistance buff on the back bar, this will carry over to both bars. It restores Magicka immediately, and it will grant you major intellect, which increases your Magicka recovery by 20% for 47.6 seconds. As you can see, the cooldown is 45. We can keep this potion up 100% of the time. Now, to make this potion, you're going to need, let me remember this, cornflower, lady smock, and water hyacinth. Those are the 3 ingredients you're going to need. They're quite expensive, but if you can get them, these potions are really, really important to the build overall. They're very, very powerful indeed. If you don't have them, of course, you can put entropy on your back bar and use major sorcery from that. Or if you have a Dragon Knight in your guild or your group or trial or whatever you're in, who is alongside of you, they can, of course, use molten armaments or molten weapons and give you major sorcery all the time anyway, because it now affects 12 people. So consider your group first before you go nuts on potions, but these are what I would use above all. If you do have a DK in your group, however, you can use trash pots instead. But just watch out, because the crafted ones do last longer, and the trash ones will have a duration where you don't have that extra recovery. Now, had a sneak peek there about the gear, but we're going to that anyway. Now we're going to go into the gear. Now, before I go into it too madly, I'm going to explain that there are options. There are things you can use if you don't have all the optimal pieces that will still perform very, very well. In fact, overall, somewhere between 3 to 5k DPS loss total. But our DPS is so high that that's not a massive drop. So, don't panic. First of all, we're going to go into what we have, and then I'll go over the options. So, start with Sororia's lightning stuff. It doesn't have to be perfected. You can use the basic version, which is from normal trials. You can run them all day long. Just look for zone chat, see if anyone is farming the trials. If not, here's a tip for you. A lot of people don't even figure this out. You can host your own trials. Shout in zone chat, hosting normal cloud rest, and see how many people you get. You will fill it really quickly. Get this particular weapon on your front bar. You want a weapon and spell damage increase glyph on it, and you want it to be precise. Remember, we do high crit damage. We want to make sure that our crit chance is up, if we can help it. So go precise on the trait. This has spell damage, minor slayer, and max magic. You can see 2 max magic bonuses there. The regular version has 1 bonus. The perfected version has 2 bonus. So there's only 1k magic difference between the normal and perfected. So it's not a massive, massive drop if you don't have the perfected version. In fact, you'll barely notice it, especially inside mechanics anyway. However, when you deal direct damage with a single target ability, you put a circle of fire basically under your feet, and it will progressively stack up and up and up and up to 20 stacks, giving you 30 spell damage every single tick. Now, it lays on the ground for a few seconds. So you have time to move around and come back into it, but you mustn't let it run out. So under my feet you can see the circle, and there's a timer counting down from 5 seconds. As long as you're in it, it will never run out. The timer won't change, and it will constantly stack up damage as long as you're doing direct damage. But if you move out, you can see the timer goes down. Get back in and it won't go away. Don't get back in and it resets to 0 and you lose all your spell damage. Now, I said earlier that I was going to show you the spell damage output overall. We're actually sitting on 3.9k with the glyph. Let's make sure the glyph is fired as well. It should be higher than that, actually. There we go. 4.3. Our spell damage is 4310 at maximum. So, you must stay inside this circle, and if you do leave it, you have to get back in it quickly. That is the trick for this set. If that's too complicated for you, do not worry, because there is an alternative you can use. It does a little bit less damage, but it's a lot easier to acquire, and it's less stressful as far as all this complicated shit is concerned. Instead of Sororia, what you can do is you can use War Maiden, which is this one here. War Maiden with a precise trait, just like before. Same glyph as before, although this one hasn't been changed. And this will give you spell crit chance, it will give you max magic, it will give you spell damage, and it will give you 400 spell damage to all of your magic abilities. As a Templar, all of our abilities do magic, so magic damage, so we're fine. In this particular build anyway. So, you got a choice. Sororia, perfected or regular, doesn't matter, or War Maidens. The choice is yours. However, the difference is Sororia will stay with you when you swap bars. So you'll notice that the flames are under me. I swap bars, and then I swap back again, and it stays with me. War Maiden will not. War Maiden will not apply on your back bar, but it'll only apply on your front bar. So just make sure your rotation is clean, and you won't lose it for too long. The trick to this is, of course, to put the staff on the front bar, and the jewelry on as well. Or 3 body pieces. As long as you've got 3 pieces and the staff, you're good. Now, the next weapon is the Maelstrom Lightning Staff. This must be infused with a shock glyph, and this is important for your Wall of Elements. Now, what this does is anything caught inside of here will take additional light and heavy attack damage, which is crazy. You must keep the enemies inside your Wall of Elements at all times. If there's no Wall of Elements, don't be doing light and heavy attacks. Make sure it's down. Also, the infused glyph means that it fires more often, giving you more shock damage more often, giving you a higher chance to create concussion, vulnerability, and off balance. So that's very important. If you do not have the Maelstrom weapon, do not panic. It is not the end of the world. You can actually double bar War Maidens or Sororia if you have it, but double bar and Sororia won't be that beneficial. So what you can do is you can go full War Maiden on both, or if you have Sororia, you have the set, your back bar you can put Willpower. Because Willpower will give you 1.4k max Magicka because it's a 2-piece bonus. So you can go with that, or any crafted staff that will give you a spell damage bonus or a max magic bonus or anything like that, just as a 2-piece until you get the Maelstrom weapon. Yes, the damage will be slightly lower, but you will still be able to perform just fine. Now, next up is the monster set. There's 2 choices here, and they're very, very close. Xan, you want infused on the head, and you want divines on the shoulders. Now, you want to go 1 heavy, 1 medium in any order, because the resistance is the same no matter what order they're in, but you want to make sure you've got 2 different pieces. Max magic on both. This has a spell crit bonus, and when you damage an enemy, which is nearby, with a light or a heavy attack, which also counts on the ticks with a lightning attack, by the way, you have a 20% chance to create a beam that will connect you to the enemy. Now, the beam lasts for 5 seconds, and it gets progressively stronger. Every second, it does 50% more damage than the previous tick. It has an 8-meter range, so if you do get out of 8 meters inside mechanics, it will break, and you'll lose it. And it has a cooldown of 18 seconds, so it's up for 5, and it's down for 13. Now, it looks like... Let me take off... No, I don't want to take off any gear. You're going to have to ignore the lightning for now. Come on. There you go, there's the beam. Now, if you go out of range, it will break. So you have to be very careful not to leave melee range. But the build's melee anyway, so you're fine. Now, that is very, very effective. It is chance-based, so it can sometimes fire a lot and other times fire a lot less. So it fluctuates, but it's very, very powerful for single target only. However, if you don't have Xan or you don't even preference it, what you can use is Grofdar. Now, Grofdar will actually give you relatively similar numbers. In fact, in DPS tests and such, I have got the same numbers with both monster helmets. So the choice is yours. But this will give you an increased max Magicka bonus instead of a crit chance bonus. But at the same time, when you deal damage, you have a 10% chance to create a lava pool that spins around you within 8 meters. All enemies caught inside of it. So yes, Area of Effect, which does stack with our lightning passive bonuses, for 5 seconds will continuously take damage, and the downtime is 10 seconds. So it's 5 seconds up, 5 seconds down, and that fires a lot more often. So if you are in an area of effect situation and you can get loads and loads of ads together, obviously the more people that get hit with this, the better, and now you can see the fire just spawned instantly. It's very, very strong. So it's your choice as to which one you use, but just remember you are close range, so either one of them will actually benefit you, but one is single target, the other is single and area of effect. I do preference Grofdar most of the time, but on single target bosses where there are no ads whatsoever, of course Xan will probably help you a lot more, because that is dedicated to it and your crit chance is higher. But they're so close. It's your choice. Now, the last set is Auroran. This is from Depths of Malatar. This is the new dungeon. It's from there. You can get it on normal. You can get it on vet. It doesn't make a difference. You want Infused on the large pieces, and you want Divines on the small. Now, same as Sororia, of course. Sororia needs to be a staff with 3 pieces of any kind. So Auroran can actually be on your jewelry. It could be on your body. It doesn't matter. As long as you've got 5 pieces and it's not the weapon, you're fine. Now, what this does is this gives you increased max health, which is why we have so much health. It gives you spell damage, and it gives you spell penetration. When I get to CPs, you'll notice that I've already accounted for that. When you do damage, however, to a nearby target with a single target ability, a light attack, a single target ability, anything, this will fire a rapid cone of lightning in area of effect in front of you every half a second for 3 seconds with a 6-second cooldown. So this is 3 seconds up, 3 seconds down. This is rapid. It's very, very strong. It hits multiple targets in a conal effect in front of you, so it's not just single target. And here's an example. That there is insane. You basically turn into Palpatine from Star Wars. It's crazy. And then, obviously, as long as you keep your light attacks up, it will fire again. It fires so fast. So if you keep your rotations up, you do damage and heal. You have minor protection, and you can have extra reduction to damage because you're channeling. And also for doing damage, you can have the Lightning Splat and the Zahn or the Groftar and your Sororia, and everything procs off each other. It's all done for you. You just have to keep your rotation clean. It's very, very strong indeed. So to recap over that, you can of course use Overwhelming like before if you still have that, but this one did outperform slightly. So this one is now the better choice of the two, but if you have the previous setup, it's absolutely fine. So to recap over traits and such, Precise on the front bar with a weapon and spell damage glyph, Infused on the back bar with a shock glyph, Infused on the head, chest and legs, Divines on the shoulders, waist, hands and belt. Neck needs to be spell damage, so do both of the rings, but you need 1 Bloodthirsty and 2 Arcane in any order. Bloodthirsty makes a massive difference to your execute power, and we do excel at that. So it's very, very important. Now, we're going to go over the champion points very quickly, then I'm going to show you rotation. Champion points are essential. The first trees, the red tree and the green tree, of course, are relatively standard to most of my builds, but you may want to change them depending on the situation. 72 points into Ironclad to reduce income and direct damage by 23%. 64 and 64, meaning all damage that you take is reduced by 13%, and any damage over time is reduced by a further 19. 19 points into Quick Recovery, because of course you get the 5% healing received bonus, which is not just your heals, but everybody else who heals you as well. So if someone heals you, you get a bonus. If you heal yourself, you get a bonus. It stacks either way. Also, this passive here, this is essential to everyone, because you will be resurrecting people, and you do want to take less damage while doing so. However, as a Templar, you res very, very fast, so you can take advantage of this passive much more than everybody else, because you're probably going to be resing more than everybody else. 44 points into Warlord to reduce the cost of Break Free. 75 points into Tenacity, 75 into Arcanist. Any more points into here will take you 25 whole points to get to that 1%. Decimals do not count. So don't waste 50 points in here trying to get 1% out of each. It's not worth it. You'll miss a whole 17% here in this Break Free cost if you did that. So don't waste them. 76 points into Tumbling. Technically, you only need 72 into here, but I put the other 4 in because there's not really anything else I can do with it. Because then I get the Treasure Hunter passive just for having a dodge roll passive that I actually want. I do dodge roll quite a bit, so it does help. This will actually give you better items from chests. It's not something that is necessarily build worthy or something that you should really strive for on a build, but it's a free passive just for using something that you would already be using, so it's nice and shiny. 61 points into critical damage. Of course, that gives us a 21% bonus. If we crit, we get extra damage. 64 points into Elemental Expert, meaning all the damage that we do with magic, flame, frost, or shock is increased by 13%. Spell Erosion. Now, I usually use a sharpened weapon on a lot of my Magicka builds, which is 2.7k penetration. We have 1.4 in our set. So I've gone with 1.4 here, which actually gives us 2.8 roughly. You can take a couple points out of this to make it 1.3 if you want, but roughly hovering around the sharpened penetration before we even start. So that's why there's 15 points in there. And of course, 35 points into here to increase our light and heavy attacks, which is essential because we are light attacking and heavy attacking all the time, and we have Empower all the time for our light attacks. Master Arms, obviously we are doing direct damage as well from our lights and a couple of our skills, so this will benefit from that. And of course 75 points into Thaumaturge because we are using a lot of damage over time, but of course 75 points here gives us the Exploiter passive, increasing our damage done against off-balance targets by 10%. We are pushing the off-balance. We obviously want to take advantage of it. Now, I'm going to explain the rotation very, very quickly, and then I'm going to show you a quick target skeleton demonstration with this particular setup at the moment with Xan present. But just bear in mind, Groftar actually did perform relatively the same. There's about 1k in it, if that, occasionally. Sometimes it's exactly the same. So, first of all, you want to make sure your Beast Trap is down. Beast Trap should always be down. That is your bread and butter. You want to be able to do crit damage, and you want to make sure that this pops. So keep that down. Swap to your back bar, first of all, once the Beast Trap is down. Start with a spear. Light attack, solar barrage. Light attack, wall of elements, swap bars. So very simple. Back bar is spear, light barrage, light wall, swap. Nice and simple. Front bar, very simple. I'll do it at range because otherwise we're going to proc loads of stuff. Light attack, purifying light. Light attack, jabs. Light attack, jabs again. Light attack, beast trap, swap. Spear, light, barrage, light, wall, swap. Light, purifying. Light, puncturing sweeps. Light, puncturing sweeps. Light, beast trap, swap. Very simple. Now, the alteration to that. Every second rotation, as long as all the procs fire off at the right time, you can acquire off balance. And you want to help your sustain with that, and you want to make sure you do extra damage with that as well. So what you do is, instead of every single rotation doing light purify, light jab, light beast trap, swap, instead of doing it every rotation, every second rotation, if you see off balance in the debuffs, take away one of your jabs and replace it with a full heavy attack. That's it. Your execute, however, you replace the jabs with a Jesus beam. So, I'm going to demonstrate quickly what that should look like. There's no debuffs or anything on the target, so it's not going to be massively awesome, but basically this. Spear, light, barrage, light, wall, swap. Light power, light jab. You can see it's off balance, so do a heavy attack instead of a jab. Beast, swap. Spear, light, barrage, light, wall, swap. Light power, light jabs, light jabs. Look at the immunity on the target skeleton. He's not ready yet. He'll be off balance soon. When I finish my purifying light, he should go off balance straight away. There he goes. Replace the last jab with a heavy. And that's all you have to do. Execute rotations, very, very simple. Instead of jabs, you just beam. Always light attack before it, though. Light beam, light beam, light beam. Very simple. Hopefully. Now, timing is of the essence. You must make sure that you light attack between every single skill. And you must make sure that you actually apply the skill. If you go too fast, you will fail. If you go too slow, you will fail. So it will take practice. There's a lot of muscle memory involved. Again, remember, back bar, spear, light, barrage, light, wall, swap. Front bar, light, purifying, light, jabs, light, beast trap, swap. Unless it's off balance, in which case replace a jab with a heavy. It's very, very important. And that heavy will not only give you double resources back if it's off balance, but will also do a massive amount of splash damage, meaning you are not negatively affecting your overall DPS by removing a jab, because you are still hitting in area of effect. Very, very strong indeed. Now, I'm going to show you a quick target demonstration where you can see kind of what to expect once you've got a really solid rotation. There is no elemental drain present because there's no one around. So I did it on my own. Now, the way that I made sure I still had major breach is I applied this, which is elemental susceptibility. Same debuff, it's just the same as a tank's taunt. So you reduce the target's magical resistance or spell resistance by 5280, simulating that we have a tank. Everybody does that. Elemental drain is usually used all the time for sustain and all that kind of crap, but instead I'm using elemental susceptibility, which does not give me back any sustain. It just applies a debuff. But this reapplies as long as I'm continuously doing damage. So I have 100% uptime on this, which means I'm basically, like I said, simulating a taunt. However, because there's no recovery bonus from that, what I've done in the demonstration is I have swapped out my food for Witch Mothers. Now, this will give me more recovery, simulating the fact that we have Ellie Drain, even though we don't. So my max magic is down, my max health is down, my recovery is up. Now, if you do have Ellie Drain in your group, which most of the time you will, your flat food will actually give you more stats, which is what we've got now, and you will actually do more damage than the demonstration. I've had to try and fiddle recovery versus debuff to try and do it. But you'll notice in the combat metrics anyway that we're not even anywhere near close to cap pen, so you got a good gauge for what happens, and there's no minor berserk or any of that stuff either. Anyway, here we go. So hopefully that helped, hopefully that wasn't too boring, hopefully you now have a better understanding of how to approach this particular build. It does take a bit of practice, but it's very rewarding if you can get good at it. Now, just remember, of course, there are options. You can take off Sororia or replace Sororia with War Maidens. You can replace Zaan with Grothdar if you want, and you can, of course, still use the Overwhelming set from the previous update. It's entirely up to you if you want to stick to it or if you want to strive for the stronger version of it, but both of them will work just fine. Anyway, first of all, thank you all very, very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support, and if you are not subscribing already, please do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you want to help support outside of the channel, there are some links in the description for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and of course the website XynodeGaming.com. Once again, thank you all very, very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.